Welcome into the big 1-2 here on 365 Sports. Paul Ketley alongside JD Piquel, Armstrong Sims, and Jack McKenzie on the production tip. Is that how you say that?
Yeah, ones and twos?
Yeah.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, they're on the He's on ones and twos.
You know.
Exactly. We're brought to you by Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagley. Please stop by. If you're an Oklahoma fan coming down from Norman in a couple of weeks for that big game.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations.
Yes. Yeah, congratulations on your luck coming in here to Waco.
Yep.
And congratulations on Caleb Williams. It seems that's worked out.
Yeah.
But go on in, Shorty's Pizza Shack, get some sick and sauce wings, get some pizza, get some cold frosty beverages before or after the game. Enjoy the atmosphere. You'll love it. I promise you'll love it. And if you don't love it, that's kind of a you problem.
Right.
I can't help you. See a therapist. They can probably help you. But other than that, just go to Shorty's Pizza Shack, 12th and Bagby, shortyspizzashack.com for the slice board. They'll probably have cool things on game day. So if you're in town, if you live here in town, you should go there, once a week. I don't know.
What is like the one thing, if it's on the slice board, it needs to be ordered? Like you will move your week around depending on what the slice board will entail.
For the slice board, if it's pepperoni and jalapeno on the slice board, it's really good there. And I'm Italian, so putting jalapeno on pizza should be foreign to me, but it just works.
Whoa, I'm mind blown. Okay, I'm excited for
it. Theirs is it's really good. Their buffalo chicken's really good. The buffalo chicken's on the spice board because they can do it. You can also do the buffalo chicken with the sikkim sauce, just so you know.
Okay.
That's a thing you
Insider
can do.
trading?
You can do. I mean, that's a thing that I know I can do. I've been with Shorty's from the beginning, from day one.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. I knew Shorty when they just called him by his first name, Ted. So so yeah, listen, on the inside. Shorty and I have hung out in New York City together doing pizza research.
True story.
Went to Yankees Red Sox game, New York City.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we went to see Comedy Club in New York City too. Yeah. So that was great. It was a great couple of days. Yeah.
Okay. I'm learning a lot here.
Yeah. So I've been from day one. So I'm an OG Shorty's.
OG Shorty, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go.
I don't know if, there's a lot of rap guys who would not like me as a Shorty in their video, but still, rap guys. That shows you I'm 41.
No, hey, nobody that's career is going to be sustainable.
No,
would side against you.
Okay, good deal.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. All right, a really interesting weekend in the Big 12. We're going to get to kind of in the next segment, where everything's shaken out. But I think we've got to lead with the biggest news, which is a coach who's got a statue of him, who's been at a place for 21 years as the head coach, who is the greatest coach in the history of TCU, and defined that program, is the defining builder of that program, JD. And Gary Patterson is no longer there. They play Baylor this week in Fort Worth, a game he always got up for, a game he always schemed for. But they are in a tailspin right now, and they decided we're just going to go ahead, make Jerry Kill the interim, and move on from Gary Patterson. And the writing's been on the wall that things were changing in Fort Worth. This just happened a lot faster than I think a lot of us thought. Your thoughts on Gary Patterson leaving TCU and what it means for the Horned Frogs down the stretch?
I think it's just crazy that the difference 9 games makes. I mean, 9 weeks of college football, and to start the year, I think a lot of us thought TCU was in the upper echelon of the Big 12. I mean, the roster they had coming back was Zach Evans and Max Duggan and just all the pieces that we thought they had. We were counting on the defense to be better. There's just a lot of pieces to this that make it surprising, and I think we talked about it last week. It really is the early signing period that we're starting to see the effects of. Even for a legend like Gary Patterson, it is in the best interest of TCU, and they allowed him to have the option to stay on to the end of the year, but good for him for saying, no, I'm just going to call it call it a stint at TCU. Because it matters for recruiting. That's the lifeblood of college football. So in terms of what it means going forward for TCU, it'll be really interesting to see who they keep on board, who they keep in the boat recruiting-wise, because that's, I think, what's going to be the biggest ripple effect. Going forward the rest of the season, we're going to learn a lot about what they have in that locker room, because they have every excuse in the world now to pack it up, mail it in, and just call it a season, because they're 3-5.
I think it's kind of not a lucky thing because he's been on the staff for a couple of years, but Jerry Kill, a former head coach, who can't be a full-time head coach because he's got health issues and all that. But Jerry Kill is someone that those players will run through a wall for, and I'm pretty sure of that. And so if you're playing TCU down the stretch, Jerry Kill's in charge now. Those guys will get up emotionally for him, but TCU's problems are not I think, emotional problems. I don't think they were not in games emotionally. I don't think I read that off of them this year. They're just not very good. I mean, they're just collectively kind of a mess. And we'll talk about them in Chalk Talk at the end. You'll see some of the defensive issues that they're having. And Gary Patterson's not only the head coach, he's the defensive coordinator. And that's the part of the ball that's really, really struggling. Even though the offense has been up and down. But, there are things, and candidly, you can hear me talk about this on Sigum 365 Radio all the time, and how I feel about Gary Patterson and what he's done, and I will preface this by people who don't know that, as I've always been very critical of him personally, not as a coach. I will say this: I think he is a Belichick level genius when it comes to the X's and O's of football. I think he knows that much about football. The difference between a guy like Bill Belichick and a guy like Gary Patterson is, Bill Belichick could not care less what you say about him, what's written about him, what other teams say about him, what players run by and yell trash talk on the sidelines. He has never once cared. Or if he does, he just channels into, I'm just going to do this and beat you. That's all the current, guys like Bill Belichick, Nick Saban, know that the only currency is winning. That the only thing that matters is what happens between the lines.
Yeah.
And Gary Patterson should know that. But given the fact that, he had this SMU controversy, list the different shots he's taken at Baylor over the years, justified or unjustified. I mean, just some weird things. The first thing I remember thinking about him was Baylor played TCU, I want to say it was in 2010, lost by 30 points. The press conference he does on Tuesday, he's accusing Baylor of stealing players because they're running a zone read out of a double tight set. And he's like, who else in America runs that? Tell me. I don't know, Gary. Probably a lot of people. You're not the guy who figured out to put a second tight end on the line when you're running the zone read. It's not, you didn't invent the wishbone or anything like that. It's not somebody stealing plays from you in practice. And where do you get it? It was the second game of the year. Maybe they watched the video of you. All these things. The SMU controversy this year about, Jerry Kill, the interim coach, got trampled by his own players because SMU was rushing the field and it was reaction and they knocked some people over. But the whole thing where he kept going and kept going and kept going. I think when you are like that, it makes it harder when you are losing and nigh impossible to keep you on board when you have to deal with, what's Gary mad about in a press conference this week?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, too, from an X and O standpoint, being able to adapt. Like we see year in and year out the best coaches, the coaches with the most longevity, which not to say he hasn't been around for a while, 21st season, but as of late, hasn't been able to get on the cutting edge of what's happening in college football. And that showed itself a lot of times during the Kansas State game, and honestly throughout the majority of the season, was guys out of position and just lackluster preparation, it felt like, at least. And I don't know if that's true, but guys weren't ready to play. I mean, the personnel wasn't ready to play. Formation, they got just out-coached in a lot of games. I think SMU being one of those games, Texas being one of those games. So I think there's a lot of things where it just, like you said, it's tough to be high maintenance and losing. I think high maintenance is reserved for people that win. And I don't know Gary Patterson. I've never even had a press conference with him or anything of that nature, so I don't want to speak out of turn there. But to your point, it was probably the right move for TCU at this point in time. As shocking as it is, I don't think anybody is shaking their head and saying, no, bad move.
Well, I'll just give you, 2021, in this kind of day and age, you can't, Urban Meyer's high maintenance.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And he's won more than almost any coach will mention on this show. But he's high maintenance. Mm-hmm. And so high maintenance is becoming a thing you don't want to deal with anymore because there's so many other things that come with it. There were times where coaches could do whatever they kind of wanted and nobody would find out until 20 years later. Mm-hmm. But now you've got about 20 hours, max, before people find out what you're doing. And just comparatively, look, Tom Herman got fired. They went 7-3 last year. Improved from the year before. They went 7-3 during a COVID year. Didn't lose a single game because of COVID. All those things kind of went well for them last year, and they still fired Tom Herman. Mm-hmm. Why? Because Tom Herman is a lot. And fundamentally, offensively, he couldn't get it straight. Gary Patterson could not get his offense straight since the year they were they and Baylor were left out of the college football playoff in 2014. Since then, he couldn't really settle on a play caller or a scheme for very long or an offensive identity. And that was fine insofar as the defensive identity was, save for a year or two, pretty solid. Well, this year, no offensive identity, no defensive identity, a coach that's every week mad at a writer or mad at the AD at SMU or mad at this guy or mad at that guy. And then you start thinking, you're like, that happens a lot. This isn't just this year. This happens when we're good. This happens when maybe it's just time to make a change for everybody.
Yeah.
The stress is too much. Jeremiah Donati's only been there, he's not the guy who hired Gary Patterson.
Yeah.
And ADs are judged pretty much by their football hires. And if you kind of let the legend run everything and they're not doing well, it's just time to go. And I don't know if Gary Patterson's going to coach again, if he's going to go on TV or whatever. He's 61. He's got all the money in the world. He's got a lifetime, membership over at the Colonial. So it's not so bad for Gary Patterson. He can sit and write, mediocre country songs in his house and do whatever he wants to do. But those are things, if people who are watching that don't really know the circle of Gary Patterson, and after your response to this, I will tell a story that will kind of illustrate it that happened to me and David Smoke personally. I'll leave it at that, but that just kind of happens in coaching.
It's just interesting because there's nobody in the crowd that is saying, nope, this is wrong. This is the wrong time. This shouldn't have happened. Like, everybody is saying, wow, this is quicker than we thought. We didn't think it would be happening right now. But when you take a closer look, you say, yeah, well, they're 3-5. Yeah, well, they're kind of going downhill. A lot of things are off base in Fort Worth right now. And so it feels like weird timing, sure, maybe, but nobody's saying it's the wrong timing. No one is definitely saying it's the wrong move. So, I have nothing bad to say about Gary Patterson as a coach. I don't know him at all as a person, but I think that what he did at TCU should be remembered with a lot of gratitude in the long run because he built them into a Power 5 program.
And that's why you also let him go now. So it doesn't get to the point where you're like, you don't want to get that. Attendance was down, play is down, he's high maintenance. It's a recipe for time for another coach. But I will tell this story. So Gary Patterson and Art Briles never got along. And this is not before the internet goes nuts, this is not a pro Art Briles story. It's not a pro, I'm not trying to take anybody's side here. I'm just telling you the facts of the case. So I'm laying this out for you, JD. Here are the facts of the case.
I'm ready.
So we're at Big 12 Media Days. Smokey and I sit down with Coach P. And Smokey asked him, said, what is the deal with you and Coach Briles? There's some tete-a-tete back and forth. You've said some things, and Briles didn't respond why he was more tight-lipped than Gary Patterson, but there was a tension in that rivalry between those two particular men. And so Gary Patterson looked me in the eye, Smokey in the eye, and said, I don't have a problem with Art Briles. Art Briles and I go on vacations together with our wives. And you can imagine, given the amount of stuff that had gone on between them up to this point, our response in unison was, really? What? Vacations together? JD, I'm sure you've been on couples trips before, or, it's probably never was someone that you've traded barbs with. So it was Big 12 Media Days, and we flew immediately after that was over to Oxnard, California, to Cowboys training camp. And there was someone working with the Cowboys at the time who, believe me, would know what Art Briles and Art Briles' wife were doing on vacation because she was related to them.
Okay.
So we asked her straight up, hey, the weirdest thing happened yesterday at Big 12 Media Days while we were picking up our credentials. Gary Patterson said that he and Art, your mom, go on trips together. Vacations. First of all, Art Briles takes he would take 3-day vacations, 2-day vacations. Go to the beach, come back, get back to it. That's how he was. So I'm thinking man, he hardly takes vacations. He's using that precious time that he does take with Gary Patterson, a guy nobody thinks he likes. And she goes, no. They and Kevin Sumlin and his wife and some other coach in Texas, I can't remember who it was, were all in the same private jet to a coaching clinic in Myrtle Beach or something like that. So Gary Patterson bent that into we're on vacation together. No, you rode together.
That's a lame vacation. I mean, that's not much of. I mean, it sounds like a work trip to me.
I mean, I'm sure the people play golf and like it's one of those coaches conventions or whatever it was. It's higher end. They were speaking. The company sent a private jet for them. But again,
What?
yeah,
That sounds like you're as much on vacation together if you're in the same hotel building.
yeah.
That's not a vacation.
No, I that Yankees game I went to with Shorty. I talked about. Okay. That Yankees game. When I went back on the subway, I went up talking to a guy who was staying in the same hotel as me. We got off the same stop. We walked up and walked in the hotel together, but that did not mean we were all of a sudden on the vacation together. Like, we didn't make any plans together after that. We walked out of the stadium together. We got on the subway together. We were kind of next to each other, both wearing Red Sox hats. We were just in the moment together, but at no point were me and this guy, and his wife on a trip.
Yeah, I'm out on that.
Yeah,
That's strange.
Yeah, so it was very strange. So that's just a little tiny microcosm of Gary Patterson. And I can tell you, after I want to say 2015 game. It was 2015? 2016? I don't know where it was. 2011, I can't remember. 2012, wherever it was. TCU loses. He gets just riled up about something Ahmad Dixon said to him on the sideline. And then Ahmad should have been suspended when he wasn't. Gary Patterson calling somebody out for not being suspended is pretty suspect, considering he had a cocaine problem running rampant through his team 3 years before that and did very little about that until it was already like you're running Bogota out of this thing and you're not suspending people. You probably need to make a move, especially the quarterback, Casey Paha at the time. So there are all these things that would happen with Gary Patterson over and over and over again. You're wondering, why is no one asking a follow-up to that? Because they know how it's going to go. So if you work there, if you're a beat writer in Fort Worth, it's not worth your time to just get in his kitchen.
Yeah.
Because then your life is going to be miserable.
Yeah.
It's not going to go anywhere, and your life is going to be miserable. And people do ask him the questions, but they just know, this is going to be a weird Gary Patterson answer to move on.
Yeah.
So, I don't know who the next coach is going to be. I don't. I have some ideas on who they should hire. I think the favorite, Sonny Dykes. Do you have anybody you would think would fit at TCU that I think Sonny Dykes, Billy Napier would be a good one to me. But if you want a guy who's already had maybe at a bigger time program, but I do think that they're probably looking at the non-Power 5 schools, the group of 5 schools for the next head coach.
You could go. I mean, if you were to go for a Power 5 coordinator, Jeff Lebby's a guy that could make some sense. It's funny because the Texas Tech and TCU shopping list, a lot of the criteria kind of matches
that's
up.
Probably also why they had to make the move. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but I kind of have more of a list of okay, let's have whoever it is match these things, be a good recruiter, especially in the state of Texas, be able to continue the ties that you already have at TCU, keep that recruiting class that's already in right now on board, and then add some guys, and then be able to establish an identity specifically defensively, whether it's that coach himself or whether it's someone else that comes along with him. Keep the defense intact at TCU because that's been their calling card for forever. That's going to be the brand that's easiest to recruit to, flip on the tape and say, hey, look at this in the 2013 whatever it was, look at us playing defense. You want to come do that? You want to come wear these colors and play this kind of defense? Come do it here. And so it's not going to be the same brand, but I think for them to be competitive in the Big 12, they got to get a little creative. I know Oklahoma's leaving. A lot of the, firepower is leaving with them. But they need to be able to have their own have their own identity because they can't be this run and shoot team. They're not going to be Texas Tech. They're not going to be a Baylor. They need to find their own identity. And I think that starts with defense. So those are my two big things: defense, recruiting. Everything else I'm pretty flexible.
Yeah, and I think sometimes teams you are good because of who you are. When you get away from that, that's when you fall astray. Look at Nebraska. Yeah. They were good because they were about power and size and knocking you around, running the ball. The minute they stop being that, they stop being Nebraska. They're just guys wearing ends on their helmets.
Yeah.
They weren't really Nebraska. I think TCU that's why I like Billy Napier. Now, you mentioned Jeff Lebby. You want to really kick sand in Gary Patterson's face, hire Art Briles' son-in-law. But
Kendall Briles, even better.
Yeah, exactly.
Art Briles comes out of retirement, takes the TCU job. How about that?
Yeah. I mean, believe me, he would take it, but that would really be kicking sand in Gary Patterson's eyes.
Place go up in flames.
Yeah, it would. When we come back, the Big 12 is now, the tiers are even more solidified. There are some teams that were in the race last week that are out of it now. I'm looking to you, Texas and Iowa State. This is the Big 1-2, 365 Sports, brought to you by Shorty's Pizza Shack. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th at Bagby is a homegrown, family-owned and operated must-visit pizza place in Waco. Fantastic pizza by the slice or get the whole pie to share. Great happy hour specials every single day, and it's not just pizza. Great wings. You have to try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries, pizza pillows, and more. Dine in for a great hangout or carry-out. Order online at shortyspizzashack.com or do yourself a favor and bring your crew to the restaurant at 12th and Bagby. Shorty's Pizza Shack. Tell them Paul sent you by. Welcome back into the Big 1-2 here on 365 Sports. Please like and subscribe whenever you get the chance. Plus to CFB with JD, our fantastic JD Piquel-centered channel. There's no one else on it. It's like the O magazine of our lineup. There's nobody else on it. I guess I'm kind of on it with this.
Yeah.
But other than that, there's zero other people on it. It's just you. You're our Oprah, which I'm totally behind.
I appreciate that.
Everybody needs an Oprah.
I mean, maybe like Oprah, if she like wasn't very popular and talked about.
At one point, Oprah had the same number. At one point, Oprah had the same number of YouTube subscribers that you do.
I appreciate that.
I mean, probably that number went up faster, but at one point, whatever your number is, she was at that.
I don't know if she was ever big on YouTube, or maybe when she did, it was like quick.
I'm sure she's got a YouTube channel somewhere, but at one point, only this many people knew about Oprah. Now, how long that lasts is different.
Right.
But,
well, I appreciate that comparison.
She's the only person who's ever been on the cover of O Magazine, I think. So, I don't know if they still have O Magazine. Armstrong's just a subscriber. He'll tell us.
I love it.
If anybody's ever been on O Magazine other than Oprah. But, JD, the Big 12 tiers have kind of separated out of the week, and we'll do the pick'em segment that people can kind of watch separately later. But this week was kind of an interesting one. You have two teams that are now out of this thing. We'll start with the game that wasn't here in our backyard. Iowa State and West Virginia. West Virginia upsets Iowa State. I did not think in a million years that would happen.
No, me neither.
I thought Iowa State had kind of reestablished themselves as a player in the league. Well, now they're out of it.
Yeah.
I guess technically not, but you got to really look at them. They need a lot of help now because they've lost to Baylor, they've lost to West Virginia, and they've got Oklahoma coming up here. So, there's problems down the line for Iowa State. I'm very surprised the season went this way for them. Hasn't changed what I think about Matt Campbell. I'm just surprised that this team with so many seniors, so many super seniors, wound up this way for Iowa State.
Well, I think this game is different if it's in Ames. It's just weird stuff happens in Morgantown.
Yeah.
Like Jared Dagey throws 2 picks, and outside of that, played pretty well. Like one of those wasn't really his fault, but I mean, you watch the game, and a lot of it felt like, okay, Iowa State's gonna run away with this one. Iowa State's gonna put it away. Iowa State looks like the better team. West Virginia's making some plays. I mean, Bryce Ford Wheaton went absolutely berserk, made some crazy, just out of this world kind of plays. But it felt the entirety of the time, okay, Iowa State's gonna find a way to win. And then Breece Hall fumbles on the 2-yard line, and that was just the dagger for Iowa State. I mean, they couldn't come back from that. That was the thing that really put it out of reach for them. I think they're a team that still could run the rest of their schedule. I mean, we'll see with Oklahoma, but they're a team that's going to, I think, still put up a decent fight. You would hope so, but now they're not playing for a Big 12 title. I mean, a lot is up in the air. I was extremely surprised they went into Morgantown and left with an L.
They still scare me if I'm playing them and I'm trying to keep pace in the conference. I think that's kind of the good news for Baylor is that, outside of Oklahoma, the teeth of their schedule's behind them. They need a couple people to do one more person to do a favor for them for Oklahoma State. But if they beat Oklahoma and then beat 3 teams that they'll be favored against in TCU, Kansas State, and Texas Tech, they can be the top seed in the Big 12.
Yeah.
And look, they can still get in. Like, even if they lose to Oklahoma, if Oklahoma beats Oklahoma State and then some other things shake out, we'll see. I mean, but that's how this Big 12 is going to look, is this people are going to beat each other. But you almost have to hope that if you're the rest of the teams, that Oklahoma maybe takes care of business and you can be second, you maybe beat them if you're Baylor, but they take care of business on the way out.
Yeah.
So
the whole control your own destiny thing is just so confusing. Like, I tried to work it out the other day, took a caffeine pill, came back to it, but as a whole, Baylor for the most part, it seems like, controls their own destiny, unless I'm wrong. I know they need some help, it sounds like, from Oklahoma State to be the top seed, but they can find themselves in that championship game if they win out. Oklahoma, week to week, seems like a different team. Like in Lawrence, they're very beatable. This week, look, they're the Monstars. So their roster is obviously the most stacked of the entirety of the conference, just from recruiting and guys they have playing right now and the way they have them playing. So, I mean, we'll see. Oklahoma State, I'd be extremely surprised if they were to run the table and were to find a way to beat Oklahoma in Bedlam. So a lot of great games coming up for some of these teams, but to your point, exactly right. I mean, Baylor, the biggest game on their schedule that's left is Oklahoma, which maybe worries you a little bit. You worry about a letdown if you're Baylor, because they were focusing so much on Texas and focusing so much on Iowa State. Like, that was definitely something they got up for. Kansas State makes me really nervous if I'm Baylor, because you got to go to Manhattan, match up well with Baylor because they're the ground and pound team. They're going to shorten the game. So, I mean, we'll see. A lot can still happen, but you're exactly right in the sense that there's a lot of tiers now starting to sort of take shape in the Big 12.
Yeah. Well, and the other team who joined the out of the race tier is Texas. 3 straight, Oklahoma State, Baylor lost. 3 straight, essentially the same way. Mm-hmm. Had a lead of varying sizes and lost it and faded down the stretch. So I think, and I asked a couple different Texas writers the same question. They agreed with me. Texas has talent, but they don't have depth. Mm-hmm. And Baylor, Oklahoma State, those teams have depth. Mm. They have depth. They can switch things up on you. Texas, and the reason they're not getting blown out, like outside of that Arkansas game, which is kind of an outlier when you look at their season, but the reason they fade against Oklahoma is that, some guys cycle out of the games. They don't have their matchups work out, in the other team's favor. Texas falls behind. They just can't keep pace. Mm-hmm. And Oklahoma State, more depth. Baylor, more depth. Texas has some talented guys. Maybe the most talented guy in the entire Big 12 plays for them. Bijan Robinson, who Baylor shut down completely.
No, 1,000%. 1,000%. And that's why I think it's exciting to see what will Texas do down the stretch now, more or less out of the race. Like, them and Iowa State, not out of it 100%, but they definitely are out of the conversation of controlling their own destiny. So for Texas, year in and year out, the question is, what's the culture like on the 40 acres? Is there a locker room of guys that want to be there, that want to play for, the burnt orange? They're just there to, do their 2-3 years, get to the NFL. Like what is really the priority there in that locker room? And so under new management with Steve Sarkisian, we're going to learn a whole lot about this program and a lot about the new culture they're trying to instill, because everyone says the right things at the press conferences. Everyone says the right thing post-game. These guys are playing for one another, this, that, and the other. But now, put the money where the mouth is, because you don't find out about your culture when you're undefeated. You don't find out about your culture when you're winning ball games by 20, 30 points. You find out when you're 500, lost 4 games, lost a tough one on the road in Waco, a game that you were up. Now we find out who Texas is. Now we find out, I think, who Steve Sarkisian is and the culture he's going to implement there.
Yeah, look, they have Iowa State this week in Ames. Iowa State just lost. That could very easily be 4 in a row. Mm-hmm. That's a big game for each of those teams. And Steve Sarkisian's not in trouble. He's not like, this is the first year. Now, granted, I'm sure Texas fans feel like, well, we thought it would be better, but you find out in the first year of the new coach really what the problems were with the old coach. Mm-hmm. No matter if the new coach is good or bad, is the right one or not, you find out exactly what the problems were, because they're changing a lot of things. Yeah. A lot of things. They're changing offensive systems. They're changing conditioning. They're changing all these things because they do it one way. And sometimes guys, I don't know if it's the guys that aren't in shape, but there's guys that aren't ready. Because it's hard for me to believe that there's not college football players that are in shape.
Right.
They get strength coaches, they have dietitians, they have all these things now. Mm-hmm. But it's just, maybe you're just like, you're not doing it the right way that you should be, that matches what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And so I think Texas fans are probably like, what's going on here? But just back off, give them some time to figure it out. But I always say this, in his previous head coaching stops with USC was not very long. Mm-hmm. But at Washington, where he did a really good job, that's why he got the USC job. At Washington, he was not a guy who ever really coached defense.
Yeah.
We saw him in the Alamo Bowl in a ridiculous game where we had to pick a defensive MVP. I think we picked Elliott Coffey because he made the most tackles. But it wasn't like anybody in that game was stopping anybody from scoring for very long, just for a second. Like, you made a tackle, it was just, you might as well just.
Congrats.
Yeah. Like, hey, good job. Tell me which play you'd like to score on. We'll not tackle you then. That way we can save some of our energy here. But it was So, I mean, he's going to have to find a defense that works. Maybe Pete Kwiatkowski, maybe not the guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's all this stuff. They're going to the SEC in a couple of years and, whenever that is, if it's 2 years or 4 years, whatever. So Texas is dealing with a lot right now. So I would keep a coach and let him focus on how do I make this team better so that when you do make that move, you're kind of hit the ground running as opposed to reinventing yourself again because you're in a new conference.
Yeah, he is the guy for the job. There's nothing that he's done specifically that's made me question that. Like you said, maybe a new DC is something you could look into, but even then, it's hard to get your guys in place. You got to recruit so many classes to finally have what you want. And coaches that are fired within 2 years, it's like, well, did he really get his guys in? Was it really ever his program, or he's dealing with pieces from the previous head coach?
I think if you're fired within 2 years, like those kind of things, it's just because there are things that you're doing that you have no control. Like, if you can't fix those things within the first year, those little things, you're not going to fix them. I think that's what the first year's for. Fix the little things. Fix the little things in the first year. Then the big things will come later. And it's hard to do that at a place like Texas because there's so many expectations, but they've not been a good team consistently. They've had some good teams, but they've not been a good team consistently year in, year out since 2009.
Yeah.
So that's over a decade. If there was a 12-team playoff anytime since 2009, they would have never been in it, ever. They've never been in the top 12. So they definitely have not even come close to the top 4 if they're not close to the top 12.
Maybe the Sugar Bowl year.
No, they were out of that. They wouldn't have been the top. They wouldn't have been the 12-team playoff.
Really?
Yeah, that's the closest they would have been. But
really? Okay.
Remember how big of an upset that was?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a huge upset. Yeah, they were out of the top 12. They wouldn't have been in the top 12 then. They just got in because of the Big 12 team goes here, and then they fit in that way.
Well, good for them.
So, but yeah, that's how long it's been, and this is and coming into this week in the Big 12, they have the most, I guess you would say, evenly matched game. Because Kansas State plays Kansas in the Sunflower Showdown. Kansas State should win that one. Baylor's playing a TCU team that just fired their coach. Now that's still a trap game, believe you me. Oklahoma State and West Virginia. West Virginia coming off a big win, and it's in Morgantown. I just think that Oklahoma State's defense will probably clamp down on those guys a little bit more. And then you have Texas and Iowa State. Oklahoma gets the week off, and I guess somebody else does who I'm forgetting at this time. And Texas Tech, they're off this week. So Texas and Iowa State's the game of like, okay, because Texas will get one more win and get to a bowl game, but which bowl game do you want to be in, guys?
Yeah.
Do you want to be in the one on December 25th, 23rd, or do you want to be in the one closer to New Year's Day?
Yeah.
That's where that game shakes out. And West Virginia, I'm gonna pivot back to that West Virginia Oklahoma State game. They have a chance to kind of redefine who they are down the stretch here.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they were a team that I personally know I left for dead weeks ago after they lost to Baylor. I said, okay, offense doesn't want to play. The defense was a bright spot, but now they don't want to play. Like, okay, that's too bad. Neil Brown, is he the right guy in Morgantown? There's a lot of questions that were swirling just weeks ago, and now 2 big wins later, it's like, all right, Jared Daigie's the man. West Virginia, let's go, Mountaineers, baby. So there's just, it shows how quickly the tide can change and how much the narrative can change from week to week in college football. So, they're a team that I think is gonna give Oklahoma State trouble. It's in Morgantown, and we've seen, especially this previous week, weird things happen in Morgantown. But I'm with you in terms of how much they're going to pressure them defensively. I know we'll make picks on that later, but that'll be a great matchup. It really does hinge for them so much on can Letty Brown get going and open it up for Jared Daigie, because we've seen if you take away Letty Brown, you take away that run game and just force West Virginia to play with just Jared Daigie, they're not able to do that.
And that's what I think the Posts are going to try and do.
Yeah.
And I think they'll probably be a little more successful. Really surprised that Iowa State wasn't, and I guess Mike Rose wasn't playing in the game, so that's kind of a big loss for them for that one. So
even the secondary, though, Bryce Ford Wheaton had a field day, and they made him look like he was All-American.
Yeah, it was. That was just a really unfortunate loss for Iowa State at a point where they jumped back into the race, and now, technically they're not out of it, but let's be realistic. There's three teams in this race now. It's Oklahoma State, and Baylor. Those are your teams in the race. We'll see who continues to stay in. And based on the schedule, I mean, even when Oklahoma plays Baylor will still be in that race. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there are some things now. If they lose that game, they're going to need a heck of a lot of help.
Yeah,
but they're still in it. And Baylor right now, if you're looking at their schedule, they should really finish no worse than 10-2, and if it's tragic, 9-3.
Yeah. I mean, because let's see, who do they have to finish the year? I know they have
it's
at
TCU,
Oklahoma, and they have Kansas State and Texas Tech. So, I mean, these next 2 weeks are going to be a really, really telling story for the rest of their season. I do worry about going to Kansas State just because it's in Manhattan, but, I mean, you hit it right on the head. TCU and Oklahoma are going to be the 2 weeks where, I mean, TCU gets a rivalry game, but Oklahoma, we're going to see, okay, what you got? How far along is this project, Dave Aranda?
Yeah, and playing a team the week after they fire a coach usually is not the easiest thing because everybody gets emotionally up and let's win one for the Gipper kind of a thing. And, we love Jerry Kill and we miss Coach P and, whatever it is. And then the other thing that happens is that when the coach, the stuff that he wasn't letting you do, what was he not letting Doug Meacham do? Or what was he not letting, what was he not doing on defense that the next guy in line will be like, no, I'm just going to do this because who the hell cares?
Yeah.
We're all probably fired too. So, who
Jerry Kill's the head coach. So probably none of us are staying around.
Yeah. Who cares? Coach P's gone. We're going to go our separate ways. I'm going to try to make my tape the best I can make it so that when people say, well, why should I hire you? Well, look at these games down the stretch against Baylor and whoever. So, but that's a bit of a trap game for Baylor, especially coming off beating Texas with the years and years of animosity that you have there.
And potentially Max Duggan was benched at the end of the previous game. If they go with the backup quarterback and Chandler Morris, I mean, probably not the best option for TCU, but if you want to look at the silver lining, Baylor's never seen Chandler Morris on tape, so it's kind of maybe the Caleb Williams effect, which is a really, really generous way to put it. But like you said, there are some things here that could potentially, if they swing just the right way, make this game interesting. Also, no Zach Evans for TCU, it looks like. He was in a walking boot, I think, last week. Hopefully he's ready to play, but I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, when we come back, Chalk Talk. Why has the TCU defense fallen so far? JD tells you all about it. This is the Big 1-2, brought to you by Shorty's Pizza Shack on 365 Sports. Life is back on, sports bettors, and BetUS has your NBA, NHL, Major League Baseball, UFC, PGA, and yes, NFL betting lines up for their 27th year and live betting on all of it. Log into BetUS.com or call 800-792-3887. That's 800-79-BETUS. BetUS for 125% bonuses with promo code SICK'EM125. Customer service pros are ready to get your phone, social, and online sports betting kickoff started now. Play with the proven mainstay in the industry. BetUS. You bet, you win, you get paid. BetUS.com. Use promo code SICK'EM125. Born in Waco, Brotherwell Brewing exists to serve the Central Texas community with locally crafted beer of the highest quality. They want to bring Central Texas closer to the brewing experience so everyone can enjoy well-made beer as much as they do. For 2.5 years, they've been bringing high-quality beer to Central Texas at their location on Bridge Street in East Waco. Brotherwell Brewing believes in community and bringing people together to enjoy products made in their community. So for your game day, whether it's a tailgate or at home, stop by Brotherwell Brewing for high-quality craft beer made right here in Central Texas, 400 East Bridge Street, and check them out online at brotherwell.com. Welcome back into the Big 1-2 here on 365 Sports. A reminder to please like and subscribe. If you don't, calamitous things will happen. Like maybe a shelf collapses on your head. It happens to people. I don't know. I've just heard the rumors. It happens. Might have happened to me today.
Where there's smoke, there's fire, man.
I know. Believe me. I did like and subscribe to something, and look what happened in my life today.
No. Okay.
A disaster.
Well, heed warning then if you're watching the show.
Exactly. Don't mess with things. Of course, we're brought to you by Shorty's Pizza Shack. Please go see the good folks at Shorty's Pizza Shack, 12th and Bagby. If you're here in Waco, look, if you're here after the Texas game last week from Austin, wanted to, get some nice sorrow food. It's good. It's good comfort food. Good sorrow food.
It is comforting food.
Yeah.
Really
so
good.
if you're happy or sad, Shorty's a great place to go.
A little Sikkim sauce can't cure.
Yeah.
It's an anecdote. Yep.
Exactly. And good, great drink specials. Maybe some Boone's Farm.
If you're feeling like it,
Yeah.
feeling a little thirsty,
Yeah.
wash it down with some Sikkim sauce. All is well.
Yeah, all is well. Well, it's time for Chalk Talk, JD. And look, with the Gary Patterson news, I'm going to tell them how the sausage is made.
Yeah.
You initially set this up as K-State's offense. But since Gary Patterson is no longer employed at TCU, we've kind of pivoted this is why TCU's defense is struggling. And this is why Gary Patterson is kind of out of a job, because he is a defensive genius and has been for 21 years. But that genius has maybe kind of run out on TCU. So this was a game that TCU was never in from the very beginning. Couldn't stop K-State, who is a good team but not an offensive juggernaut. And K-State did what they wanted all day long.
Mm-hmm. And when we do these chalk talks, when we set them up, a lot of it is, wow, there was a chess move there. The offense did something that put the defense out of position. There are a lot of things that we're going to see on tape here where TCU's just flat out wrong. And it's coaching, it's tackling, it's the personnel. There's a lot of things that are left to be desired that make you look, okay, this is the TCU team that's supposed to be one of the better defensive programs in the Big 12 historically. Not the case. We'll show you why throughout a myriad of clips, so buckle up. Right here, we got two out-breaking routes from the tight end. So he's coming out here, he's coming out here. We're in zone coverage. Deuce Vaughn doing what's called a pipe route right up the seam. So right here in the zone coverage, they're supposed to match the out and carry the seam is what the defensive back's responsibility is. So we're going to match it here, we're going to match it here. He's going to carry Deuce Vaughn up the seam. Ideally to the safeties where he's supposed to carry him, to pass him off. Right here. So let's see if we can run this a little bit more. When I say carry the seam, it means carry the seam to the next defender. So run with him until you get to the safety. That safety's supposed to take him from there because you're not a fast guy. He's a fast guy. That's why you carry him to him. So they do a good job matching here. Okay, that's covered up. We're here. We're here. He's running with them. Okay, right here. This safety is supposed to be running with Deuce Vaughn. That is a problem because look at how much real estate. Look at the head start. He's over here playing the sideline. He's not. He didn't carry him nearly far enough. Also had collision at the top that left him out of position. Wide open. And Deuce Vaughn's a good back, but he's also only 5'6". You can't allow the 5'6" running back to run a pipe route on you all the way up the field to set you up in scoring position. Bad for business. TCU again looks out of position. Guys look like they don't know what they're doing. And it's not necessarily a novel scheme. Like Kansas State isn't rewriting the history books here, rewriting the playbooks, I should say. A lot of things that TCU just flat out of position on, and that was a great example there in the coverage.
Yeah, and this was TCU never used to do that. And Gary Patterson, for each individual game, and especially one like this, Kansas State's his alma mater, this is one that he kind of gets up for usually, and he finds those specific things. It's just not happening, and part of this is probably the dudes, the guys he's got out there. I know he's got some injuries on defense, but part of it is, they're just not scheming it up right, or they're just not there. It's strange to see from a TCU team.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that's maybe looking like common sense would defer to a different scheme, and we'll get into that, especially in some other looks. But right here, just bad angles, just bad football as a whole. So right here, they're running a read option scheme. So everybody that has watched any college football broadcast has seen them drop the crash, and if he does this, he pulls, so we'll do it here again. If he crashes, we're going to pull and go out here. If he goes upfield, we're going to give it to Deuce Vaughn, and he's going to stay on his track for the inside zone. This man right here, responsible for the quarterback, so he's responsible for if he pulls it. This linebacker right here, responsible for the dive, so if he gives it, that's who he's sticking with. Kansas State turns both of these guys loose, so this is his read right here. He's coming free on a blitz. Kansas State doesn't account for him. Essentially, he can make the tackle. So you take a good angle, have a chance to blow this play up. He takes it really, really wide and doesn't give himself a chance. So right here, you're going to want to run more towards the mesh. Maybe he's playing a flick technique, meaning running to the quarterback and then flicking back out. Whatever he's doing, it's a bad angle and he executes it really poorly, trips over his own footing. So the play started here. Rewind this again. Again, quarterback, dive, watch what happens. He gets up there for the dive. Fine, great, run with the running back. My man off here gets off the block and gets absolutely bullied. Watch how much he gets blocked back. This is a linebacker. TCU teams are physical. Like, historically, TCU gets up there, grounds and pounds with you. They're physical. My linebacker's over here getting driven into the end zone. Boom. Skylar Thompson touchdown. It's plays like that where not only are they just out of position, not executing well, it's just they're getting out physical. Anytime a linebacker's back in the paint, you got real problems on defense.
The zone read is one of those plays that if you are a good defense, you blow it up every time because you essentially just hit both guys.
Yeah.
Like they don't have a choice. Like the quarterback doesn't have a choice because the running back's going to get hit or he's going to get hit.
Yeah.
Like that's how you execute that. There, Skylar Thompson could have done really either. I mean, it was smarter to keep it because the guy, reading him was well past him already. But he could have handed the ball off, and maybe the same thing happens.
Yeah, I mean, especially down in the red zone, they had a chance to be right, whatever they decided to do there, but made it more embarrassing on film for that defensive end that he did pull it, that he took a bad angle, walked into the end zone. I mean, they're getting reamed in film for that one, I guarantee you. We talked about it just to play before. There were a lot of things that it just looks like TCU is scheming up in a weird way now. I've never been asked to call any defense, let alone an FBS division level defense, so take this for what it's worth. But right here, the rules for TCU are telling them, okay, if there's a tight end over here, we're going to match a tight end with the safety. So both safeties end up on the right side of the field. So essentially, Kansas State's got two tight ends over here, safeties over here, safeties over here. So they're messing with their rules. Now, what looks funny about this picture, you got one guy over here for all of this real estate. He's manned up here. So you're asking your outside linebacker to play what, like 60% of the field? That's not a good idea. It's 4th and 1, so that just there's messing with the rules. TCU isn't able to adjust to it, or for lack of a better term, they don't adjust to it, and they pay the consequence here. Inside zone, nothing novel, nothing crazy. Back it up. Takes his read step. My man right here just goes kamikaze mode. Again, you have the whole 60% of the field here. We're probably being a little bit stingy with saying 60%, probably more like 70%. And he just dives. He takes himself out of the play, takes a horrible read. There is nobody, you can't go and bury yourself between two blockers when you have this much of the field. There is nobody behind you, my guy, if you try and take yourself out of the play. Bad for business. It's 4th and 1, so I get you're trying to make a stop, but there is just a gaping hole. Deuce Vaughn's a really talented back, should be up for all conference, should be up for a lot of postseason accolades. I think you and I can probably get that first down, if not take it to the house, with what they're bringing defensively. Just a lot of empty spaces.
Yeah, somebody would have caught me, but I'd have had the first down.
Heck, you would have.
I would have had 15 to 20.
Yes, sir.
I would have had 15 to 20 on 4th and 1, which, the most you want to give up on 4th and 1 is 1. Honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, they got the 1.
Yeah.
Okay, their guys pushed our guys back this far, not the big gaping hole. And that's horrible technique there. And horrible technique goes back to, most of the time, coaching. Now, sometimes you can coach and coach and coach and coach, but and a guy just never gets it. But that's not been Gary Patterson's MO. Usually, their technique is pretty flawless.
It is the beautiful, imperfect marriage of bad technique meets unprepared personnel versus unprepared formations. There's a lot of things they're doing well. It's just the beautiful storm of just ugliness on defense. And we saw it again here. Guys, you talk about being uncoached. Right here, it's play action. 1st and 10. You don't need to bite so hard. You already have, let's see, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's call it 8 in the box, more or less. You're the lone safety back here. You cannot afford to trigger on the run. I get you want to be in run support. I get you want to help your team and get a stop. But on 1st and 10, we don't need you flying up here, buddy. And so watch, the play action takes him for a loop. He's up here. Look, he's 5-6 yards out of position. This guy's running right past him, let alone this corner who's all the way on his own right here. We'll back it up. He's in man coverage at the bottom, so he's got to take care of him. You are our last line of defense. We don't need you in run support, my guy. And watch, he knows it right away. Has an oh darn it moment, right? Anytime you're in this position as the last line of defense, bad news. Very, very bad news. And they cut and they pay for it with a big, big play right here. Also, look at this picture. Anytime you're in trail like this and you got a receiver all the way over here, he was over here, he's over here. You got 5 yards of separation. Come on, man. I know he's a D1 receiver, but you're a D1 defensive back. Don't get lost 5 yards. Now, again, he'd probably lose me for 5 yards, but you've been in the weight room and you've been doing this all season long, so burden of proof's on you. Just plays like that where guys that can't make mistakes make crucial mental mistakes, like trying to trigger on the run when you're the last high safety. Bad business.
By the way, I want to call something note to that. The score at that point was 21-5.
Yeah. Scoregami.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It never, ever is good when you have 5 points. If it's 5-0, it's not good. It's not good. I've never seen a team have 5 on the board, even though that means you got a safety, and things are going well. Right? Isn't that weird? If you have 5, you've done something right. Mm-hmm. but you're also doing something wrong.
You got to talk about it.
It's one of those weird football things that 5 is not a good score to have.
No touchdowns.
Yeah. No
touchdowns.
If it's 5-0, you better make it 12-0 really fast.
Yep.
Because if it stays at 5, if it's 5-3, it's going to be 10-5 in a second, or 17-5 before you know it. It's just how football goes. I don't know why. It's the football gods, but nothing ever good happens with 5 points on the board.
No, you're exactly right. And to make matters worse, I think that was like the third quarter, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I mean, never a good sign when it's 5 points. 100% right. Lastly, this is probably just the ultimate example of poor coaching, poor awareness, poor tackling. We see that on this play. They're going to bring my man across the formation here, and what he should do is shift over. So he shifts over, he walks down. He doesn't do anything. He maybe takes a step to his left to appease his coaching staff, but what he doesn't understand is we got a seam coming up the middle right here. So the defense, so we all shift at the defense, we bump over, call that a bump. They're making a call, hey, bump, 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 motion. That my man's just chilling. So we have all this real estate beside you. So when you bump, it also changes your assignment. So, for example, that bump causes him to not be responsible for my man down here. He was responsible for him right here, but now with that bump, he's the number 2 receiver. We got him in the flat. Again, he doesn't bump over. So sorry, these two are responsible for the flat. No communication. He's just sitting on this. Like, we got a seam coming, and he's just a statue over here, worried about our post route we got over here. Can't be doing that. Easy pitch and catch. And to just add insult to injury, don't want to be a big-time player, get stiff-armed, grab some turf. Thanks for coming to Manhattan. See ya. Just all around, a lot of things where there's like a teach tape here for what not to do defensively. Personnel is out of position. They're not making good checks. The coaching staff isn't scheming just common sense things. Putting 2 safeties to a double tight end on the play side, like on 4th and 1, what are we doing here, folks? So it's unfortunate. Gary Patterson is a legend in college football, especially at TCU. He built the whole program, got a statue, deservedly so. But watching this tape might have been time to go.
Yeah, and sometimes programs just need a shift and a change. We talked about it early in the show, and I'm sure there'll be plenty of discussion of it on this video as people watch it. Thanks for watching the Big 1-2. JD, great stuff, as always, on the Chalk Talk. We're back again next week. Same Big 1-2 time, same Big 1-2 channel here, 365 Sports. Again, like and subscribe to ward off the demons. I'm just telling you, I didn't do it sometime this week, and I almost destroyed our whole building.
And don't score 5 points. Those 2 things. So you might score 5 points. You don't like to subscribe.
If you score 5 points, if it's 5-0, it's just 5-0. You've got to score. I also believe this, and this is going to kind of tangent. If you get a safety, you need to score when you get the free kick. If you don't score when you get the free kick, you're going to lose. Got to score when you get the free kick.
If you don't like and subscribe, you won't score when you get the free kick.
Exactly. Another good point. Got to score when you get the free kick. Learn that, kids. Get it tattooed on your chest. Got to score when you get the free kick. This is the Big 1-2 on 365 Sports. For JD McKell, for Armstrong Sims, and Jack McKenzie. See you next week, everybody.